The two anti-choice activists who were part of the group that created the now famously debunked Planned Parenthood sells baby parts videos have been charged with 15 different counts of, 15 different felony counts. Now, in announcing the charges against David Robert Daleiden and Sandra Merritt on Tuesday, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said that the two used manufactured identities and a fictitious bioresearch company to basically trick these officials so that they could spy on them, so they could record their private conversations, so then they could go on to deceptively edit them as part of the so-called sting operation to try and shut down Planned Parenthood. Now, the criminal complaint from the Washington Post alleges that on 14 occasions between October 2013 and July 2015, Daleiden and Merritt filmed people without permission in LA, San Francisco, and El Dorado counties. The activists face a felony count for each person covertly recorded and an additional felony charge for criminal conspiracy to invade privacy. So this is a privacy issue. So that's what they're being charged on, not for deceptively editing videos. And I think that's very, very important, because as you're going to see, they're going to try to use a defense of, well, this was just journalism. We'll get to that. Okay, so these guys are being charged. Planned Parenthood, and this is very important, Planned Parenthood has been charged with nothing. Why? Because Planned Parenthood did nothing wrong. This isn't me saying that, by the way. This is 13 different Republican investigations in different states that are saying this. All coming to the same conclusion. Planned Parenthood is not engaging in the sale of baby parts. There is no evidence. There's nothing there to prove that these videos have any bit of truth to them. They're deceptively edited. So that's very important. They could not find even any evidence. And these videos, of course, illegally obtained and highly deceptive. And so what they did is that they ended up using fake names and driver's licenses to trick workers into thinking that they were someone else, when in reality they were affiliated with something called the Center for Medical Progress. Now, the Center for Medical Progress, it's nothing more than an anti-choice group that puts out propaganda. Now, propaganda, like essentially claiming that Planned Parenthood sells baby parts, which they do not. Now, here's their defense. Daleiden's lawyer, Steve Cooley, blamed the charges on Senator Kamala Harris, a former Attorney General of California whose office initiated the investigation that produced Tuesday's charges. He claims Harris corrupted the current Attorney General's office in order to, quote, pander to her constituents and her supporters. What does that even mean? Pander. Pander to your constituents. How is she pandering? By protecting Planned Parenthood that did nothing wrong. Again, there was nothing criminal about what Planned Parenthood had done. They're not selling baby parts. 100%. That is not happening. There is no proof to that. No evidence to that. Any evidence that they created was simply something that they created. They manufactured this so-called evidence, and it was found to have been deceptively edited. That's the problem. So how is this pandering? It's not. They did nothing wrong. That in itself makes no sense. And then he finally says, it was nothing more than a First Amendment journalist pursuing a good cause and fighting a battle, now a martyr who's being crushed by the power of the state of California. Dude, the First Amendment doesn't cover bullshit. It doesn't cover lies. This was not even journalism. This was a hatchet job. And not only that, but the First Amendment issue doesn't even come into play here. This is a violation of other people's privacy, covertly recording them. This isn't journalism. This was invasion of privacy under false pretenses. Also, they could go after a healthcare provider that they don't like. You know why? It's because they don't want women to actually have a choice. And that's the thing. These people think that they're pro-life. They're not actually pro-life. What they are is that they're anti-choice. See, you can be against abortion personally and still be pro-choice, because that is your personal decision. That is your personal choice. See, we are all pro-life. But most of us realize that we shouldn't be making choices for other people who are more than capable of making the decisions about their own lives and their own bodies. That's the thing. See, these kinds of activists, they don't care about your choice. They want to remove that choice and force women who are victims of rape and incest to have a baby they might not want. And they do so by lying about it, creating false tapes, and doing false studies. There are even reports of some of these people dressing up as doctors at so-called crisis pregnancy centers to try and mislead women. They will claim to be doctors. They will claim to have medical knowledge when they actually don't. They're not actual doctors. And they'll say things like, abortions will make you sterile. If you have an abortion, you'll be sterile for the rest of your life. That's not true. Or abortions will increase your risk of cancer. That is also not true. And then these same groups will lobby politicians to pass laws to remove your body autonomy if you're a woman. That's not right. And then, of course, ironically, and this is what makes them not pro-life, because you can't have a pro-life position and be against things like WIC, and be against things like affordable housing and healthcare for everyone, and social safety nets. These same groups are the same groups that are okay with you cutting social safety nets for young single mothers and poor women, and blaming these same women for getting pregnant in the first place. Okay? And also going after people who go to Planned Parenthood because they can't afford health screenings in other places. And of course, look, Planned Parenthood does do abortion. That's true. It's 3% of what they do. But that shouldn't matter because of all the other good stuff that they also do. And it also shouldn't matter because abortion is legal. We shouldn't be having this discussion. This is a personal choice up to a certain point. Now, that of course does not stop these videos from prompting lawmakers in several states from trying to eliminate Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. See, there's a lot of people depend on Planned Parenthood for their health screenings. And a lot of these women who are poorer happen to also be on Medicaid. In places like Texas, when you shut down Medicaid funding, you leave out a lot of women who can no longer afford to get these screenings, these cancer screenings, and you know, other things like that, other tests. So, I mean, for example, just last month, a federal judge ruled that Texas could not cut off Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood, which is actually a good thing. U.S. District Court Judge Sam Sparks in Austin wrote that Texas officials lacked even a scintilla of evidence to conclude that Planned Parenthood committed wrongdoing and warranted termination from the Medicaid program. He said, a secretly recorded video, fake names, a grand jury indictment, congressional investigations, these are the building blocks of a best-selling novel rather than a case concerning interplay of federal and state authority through the Medicaid program, Sparks wrote in his ruling. And look, he's not wrong. See, what they're trying to do to Planned Parenthood is the same thing they did to Acorn. Except in this case, we don't have a weak Democratic president in office that will cut off their funding for them. And Planned Parenthood, by the way, is also incredibly popular. In fact, there was a Quinnipiac poll done earlier this week that asked Americans how they felt about the Republican plan to cut Planned Parenthood. Now, when it explained that federal funding for Planned Parenthood is used only for non-abortion health issues, which is true, thanks to the Hyde Amendment, which unfortunately a lot of people don't actually know what the Hyde Amendment is and what the Hyde Amendment actually does, or that it even exists. But it does. It says that no federal money can go towards abortion services. That's it. No taxpayer money funding that funds abortions. We already have that in place. So, you know how many of the American people, when they know this, say, yes, Planned Parenthood, we should not cut their funding. We shouldn't cut their federal funding. We should continue to fund them. 80% of Americans say that we should not cut funding for Planned Parenthood. This includes over 60% of Republicans. More than half of Republicans like, Yeah, don't cut federal funding for Planned Parenthood. I rely on Planned Parenthood. I know people that rely on Planned Parenthood, women, and they do a good service. And if we know that none of our money is going to abortion, my tax money is not going to your abortion, well, that's great. Then I support Planned Parenthood. Now, when they ask the same question but without explaining this, voters still oppose cutting Planned Parenthood funding 61 to 33%. So if you know the facts, you're more likely to support Planned Parenthood. And if you don't know the facts, you're still more likely to support Planned Parenthood because of all the good that they do. So this is why people like these two individuals that are now being charged with felony counts have to lie and do heavily edited, misleading videos. Your case is pretty weak when you have to lie and make things up to get people on your side. When you have to put so much effort into trying to deceive people, you know you are on the wrong side. So, good on California for doing this, for fighting back against this disgusting smear campaign against a good organization. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.